As promised, let's get right to our first guest.
Bill Walton, hardest hit by this whole situation.
Yeah, right. He is America's college football insider for the Action Network. We've had him on the show before. Glad to have him on again. Brett McMurphy joining us here as we kick off things here on a Monday. And Brett, man, a lot to go over from what happened on Friday and the last several weeks. I guess let's start with the Pac-12. What is next for the Pac-12? Do they survive, or do the remaining four schools end up somewhere else, and does the Pac-12 cease to exist?
Yeah, that's what's basically literally going on right now. The Pac-4, I guess, is having discussions with the Mountain West. And what's unknown is, does the Pac-4 want to bring schools to their conference, which I'm sure they do, because then they would argue there's still a autonomous or Power 5 conference, at least for the next 3 years, and would have all of the money and rewards of being a power conference. Where it gets tricky, though, is the schools that they would probably add are in the Mountain West, and they've got a $34 million exit fee to leave the league and play in another league in 2024. So one way to do it is the Mountain West, it takes 9 out of 12 members to vote to dissolve the conference. You could do that, and then those schools could leave and go to the Pac-12. The question is, would the Pac-12 want all 12? Probably not. Would they even want 9 of the 12? I'm not so sure. And then you don't know what's going to happen with Cal and Stanford. A lot of people speculating, it makes sense to me that Stanford may go independent. I don't think they want to be aligned with those schools from the Mountain West, even if you throw in an SMU or Tulane or whoever you could grab from the American. It'd be like a Frankenstein-type monster being put together with all these different parts. I don't think Stanford wants any part of that. Cal's a different situation. They've got the most debt of any athletic department in the country. And now you're going from, a media rights deal that paid you, $30 million a year to potentially one that maybe pays you half of that. I don't know. Maybe they drop athletics. They have a board meeting tomorrow. I don't think they would do something that quickly, but I'm really concerned about the future of their program, and so I don't know what'll happen. I think at the end of the day, though, that probably right now we have 10 conferences. I wouldn't be surprised if when we get to 2024, if we're down to 9. The question is, what does that Pac-4 Mountain West thing look like, and who has control over it? Because if it's the Mountain West bringing the 4 Pac-12 or 2 Pac-12 schools over, you can't say, well, we should be a power conference because we're bringing in a couple of Pac-12 teams. So ultimately, money will determine this. Surprise, surprise. I guess I buried the lead. And, easily these lawyers can figure out a way to make these moves to keep this autonomous 5 stature, at least for the next 3 years, which, by the way, I don't think they'll be able to.
Do you think any conference has an interest in Stanford? You mentioned that they would survive as an independent. Is the ACC maybe interested in grabbing them?
I think they would be if they weren't all the way across the country. Probably thinking, well, SC and UCLA are going to go all the way across the country, but the difference is the amount of media rights. USC and UCLA are going to make a lot more money in the Big Ten than Stanford could make in the ACC. And for the ACC, I do know if they bring on any new members, if they expand, ESPN will pay those new schools pro rata. So they'll make the same amount as the current members. Just with all the travel, and then if that's the only school out there, or, do you bring in Cal? Would that even work? I know that, the ACC had potentially talked about, grabbing 5 of those schools out there. I mean, I think it's a big difference when you have 5 schools compared with just 2, because then those guys truly are on an island. And, believe me, I know that these things are being talked about. As strong as Stanford is, and look, in the last 25 years, they've had the best athletic program top to bottom in every sport for basically all but one of those years. I just think because of the distance between the ACC and Stanford that it's likely not going to happen. But I know the ACC is looking at every option on how they can increase revenue. I just don't think adding schools is the answer. And then just follow that up, I don't know what the answer is.
Well, that's what I was coming at you with next. We're obviously paying very close attention to this, in Syracuse because of the ACC and the ramifications of what will happen to the conference next. And I think a lot of people, even in our chat section here of the show, talking about, the ACC is going to be next in terms of, conferences that are ripped apart by conference realignment. We hear Florida State is, talking a lot about how unhappy they are, and you better make us happy or we're going to go elsewhere. And yet this the grant of rights are in place until 2036. And my stance on this has been, if there was a way out, they would have found a way out by now from the grant of rights. What do you think? I guess if you don't think that they're going to add schools, do you think the ACC remains intact for the foreseeable future given the grant of rights, or do you think ultimately Florida State will figure a way out of this, or just pony up the gobs of money that it's going to take to get out of the conference?
Well, if they can just simply write a check, they'll be out. I mean, they've made it no secret. They're not. Are they going to leave? But when are they going to leave? I mean, they basically said that in their Board of Regents meeting.
Right.
August 15th is a key date if they want to get out for next year. If it's after that, then they would be in the league for another couple of years. The question is not can they pay the exit fee. The question is how can they get out of the grant of rights, which you guys know all too well is still for another 12 or 13 years. So they feel like there's a path out, that they can get out. We'll have to see. And it's not going to just be Florida State. I think Clemson will also jump over the wall. I think Miami will jump over the wall. I think North Carolina possibly. And then Notre Dame, if those schools, say they're leaving the league, does Notre Dame really want to have a scheduling agreement with the ACC? And I don't know what that would entail for Notre Dame to get out of it, since all their Olympic sports are ACC members, and we would have to see how that plays out. But unfortunately, I think if we have this discussion, 5 years from now, the ACC will not have the current lineup that they do right now. I feel very confident about that.
Florida State's been very vocal. Do you know where they would end up? They've clearly got a destination in mind. They wouldn't be doing this if someone didn't want them, right?
Yes and no. They don't have an official invitation. There's not leave the conference and you're coming here. But basically, they're betting, and it's a big gamble that they would get an offer from the Big Ten or the SEC. I mean, that's why they're going to get in one of those conferences. Will they be able to? Grab your popcorn. We'll find out. The lawyers are going to make a lot of money. But they're not making this move to go to the Big 12. I mean, they want to get to one of the two behemoths, and because that's, as they've said multiple times, that's where the money is, and that's such a huge difference between what they're currently making and what they could make in those two leagues.
Is there any way the ACC can get more money? Is there any, can they reach out to a different TV network for other options? Is there anything they can do?
I mean, I'm sure they're looking at every option out there, but I don't know how they can. I mean, ESPN has the rights; they're exclusive to ESPN. And why would if you're ESPN, to be honest, why would you give them more money? Oh, by the way, we feel sorry for you, so here's more money. It doesn't work that way, which is unfortunate, but. We'll have to see ultimately what happens, but I don't know how they can do it. Like I said, if you add members, it's not going to increase the amount of the revenue. And even if you bring in the new members at a lower rate, there's not going to be enough difference like say to bring in a number at a lower rate, then you divide up they don't get a full share, they get a half share. And then you divide that money up between your other remaining members. That's not enough to keep Florida State, Clemson, Miami in the conference, because you're still not getting up to the SEC or Big Ten money. So I don't know. I feel for Jim Phillips. He's a bright guy. He obviously knows what he's doing, but he's limited in what he can do. I mean, Greg Sankey could be the ACC commissioner. Jim Delaney, rest in peace, Mike Slive. I mean, name anybody you want could be the commissioner of the ACC, and I don't see a different end game than what's going to happen, and that is some schools are going to leave. And then how many schools leave, and then who does the ACC replace them with, and what does the ACC look like in 5 years or so?
You mentioned that about what does it look like. Would it be important for them now to add people before they get taken, whatever's left now, or wait until you have to pick from whatever's left in order to survive?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. And as far as the SEC and the Big Ten, there were, again, the SEC, unless something crazy happens, which probably while we're on the phone will happen, the SEC is not going to get a Big Ten member. The Big Ten is not going to get anybody from the SEC. So basically, those guys are hands off. So then the SEC and the Big Ten look across the country and say, okay, who's out there we can get? Well, do you want to pick first or do you want to pick last? Well, the SEC and Big Ten pick first. OU, Texas, USC, UCLA. So as far as your question is, should the ACC go grab somebody? Okay, well, who are they going to grab? They're not going to get anybody from the Big 12 because those guys are locked in, and they're making basically the same amount of money as the ACC and potentially more down the road. So you're not going to get anybody from the Big 12 unless possibly you convince West Virginia for geography reasons to make the move. But I'm not sure if they would. So other than that, so if you're just saying, okay, we're going to be choosing either some of these Pac-12 schools, the four that remain, or we're going to have to pick some Group 5 schools from the American, from whoever you want. It doesn't matter. Those guys are going to be available, a year from now, 2 years from now. They're not going to get invites to the SEC. They're not going to get invites to the Big 10. The Big 12's done. Unless one of them's going to merge with the Mountain West or something. So there's really, by bringing those guys in, I don't think it solves anything. And to be honest, and I hate when people say to be honest, because it's like, well, then you're never honest before that, but I just said it. To be honest, if I'm Florida State, Miami, Clemson, and you pick any Group 5 school out there, that just makes me want to leave the league even sooner.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And, we're talking conference expansion here, Brett. Do you ever think we'll get to a point where there's conference contraction? Like, the SEC looks around and says, what's Vanderbilt bringing to the table? Or the Big Ten says, what's Rutgers bringing to the table if their football program continues to struggle? Do you ever think we'll get to that day where, schools are asked to leave?
Oh, wow. In the current setup, in the current structure, no, because I don't believe presidents will force another university president out of their league. But, a boat was coming. But if we get to a point, and I can see it happening, where these football programs are no longer affiliated with the universities, they are kind of a separate part of the university. They are basically what they are right now. They're minor league football. They're minor league version of professional football. Then if that happens, I could see that happening. I could see that the SEC, telling Vanderbilt, hey, look, you're going to be an SEC member in every sport but football. But
he kicked himself out like Vanderbilt.
Yeah. We were close to wrapping that up anyway, but I mean,
good stuff.
It really was. We'll see if we can get him on. We'll finish this interview. But, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of different angles to this.
The Big East did that to Temple.
Yeah.
They kicked Temple out.
Yeah. And I'm with him in that, if these conferences continue to grow and if you're Michigan and Ohio State and you're looking around and you're like, so we're making the same amount of money as Rutgers, or or Alabama and Auburn are saying Vanderbilt's making the same amount as us. Like, why?
That's basically what Florida State's saying right now.
Yeah, right.
To the ACC is, why are we making the same amount of money as Syracuse?
All right, I do think we have Brett back, and he can finish that thought, because I think it is a very important topic. Sorry we lost you there, Brett, but you were saying that you could see it potentially happening down the road.
Yeah, sorry about the cutoff. So real quickly, because I think if the football programs leave the university so that they're no longer really affiliated with the university. So Alabama would still represent the University of Alabama, but they would be separate from the university. And that way, then you could see the SEC telling Vanderbilt, hey, you know what? Your football program is not going to be in our federation or our SEC affiliation. You will remain an SEC member in every sport but football. And so that way, I think you could see even more movement within the conferences, because, again, we keep going more and more towards the NFL model. And then the SEC could grab the biggest brands for just the football model. And in what you asked is a great question. And then at that point, then you could see some dead weight getting booted out. But as long as the university presidents make that call, I find it hard to believe a university president will vote out another university president.
All right, we started with Stanford, and you're talking Syracuse. When I look at Syracuse, I think Stanford. If the ACC does get picked apart, Syracuse seems to be in a nowhere land, right?
Well, let's just say when I broke the story in Amelia Island in May at the spring meetings about the Magnificent Seven looking to increase the revenue and kind of maybe band together and do their own league, Syracuse was not one of the seven.
Yeah.
So they would be in a difficult spot. And it's kind of ironic in a way because, Syracuse and Pitt, basically left the Big East. And basically that's when the Big East went from being an automatic qualifying conference when we had 6 of those. And then we kind of got that reduced to the Power 5. So, if I'm Syracuse, I want the ACC to stay together forever. I've described the ACC grant of rights. The late, great philosopher Meatloaf kind of summed it up best in Paradise by the Dashboard Light. I swear I'll love you till the end of time, and now I'm praying for the end of time. They want that deal to end. But if I'm Syracuse, if I'm Boston College, if I'm Wake Forest, you want this thing to stay together, because if you lose a Florida State, a Clemson, a Miami, a North Carolina, a Notre Dame, the ACC will still exist, I think. But then you're going to have to bring in, some of these schools in the American and, whoever that would be. I don't know, USF, East Carolina, Tulane. I mean, I have no idea. But certainly, ACC fans that are left over are probably not going to be too thrilled about that. But that's kind of how life kind of goes on here in college athletics these days.
Real quick, Brett, because you mentioned Meatloaf, I know that you asked all FBS coaches their favorite musical artist. Do you remember what Dino said? What Dino Babers said?
I do, but I'm not going to scoop myself. You got to wait.
I'm guessing James Brown.
I will tell you that. What's that?
I thought James Brown was. Could have sworn.
If I was going to say, if you guess it, I will tell you. I know we're on radio here. Darn it, I'm trying to find the schedule. ACC is August 18th.
August 18th. We're making a note of that.
Unveil the ACC schools. Dino is in there with Dave Dorn, Mac Brown, Narduzzi, Tony Elliott, Brent Pry, and Dave Clausen. Dave Clausen, by the way, has one of the most fascinating answers, because you think of him, and then the band he chose is like so non-Dave Clausen.
Is that right?
I love it. He's a big fan. But you may or may not have guessed correctly, because I have done this in the past. But, we're rolling those out every day. So you got to wait for the ACC. But today we started it off with the American Conference. And surprised me that who Tom Herman picked. I'll just leave it at that.
All right, we will have to check that out. I know you're very busy these days, Brett. Thanks so much for sharing a few minutes with us, and we'll be looking out on August 18th. Thanks for coming on.
You got it, guys. Thank you.
All right, Brett McMurphy.
The only reason I
from
guess
the Action
that is
Network.
because he ends practice with that every.
It was a good guess.
Thank you.
It sounds like you were right.
Yeah.
He would not confirm or deny, which usually means
he said I would. If you guessed it right, I tell you.
It's usually a confirmation when somebody says I can't confirm or deny.
I thought he ended practice with James Brown, but I could be wrong.
All right. Well, we'll confirm on August 18th.
I might be an insider too.
Yeah. You and Brett have something in common. All right, we're going to hit a timeout.
I asked more questions than I did.
I know. You kept giving me the signal. One more, Steve. One more.
I asked more questions than I've ever asked, so I'm done for the day. I'm going back on vacation.
I was going to say, you missed the show, apparently, while you were gone. I'm impressed. Phone lines are now open for the next hour. 315-437-7644. A lot to get to with this conference realignment.
This is how it looks. Well, I'll tell you how I think the ACC looks in 5 years.
All right. Time out here. Back after this on ESPN Radio.